All right, let's get started. So in the previous section, Rich, Paulo, Graham, they talked a lot about what are some of the challenges organizations are facing with public cloud adoption. The challenges related to, Graham talked about infrastructure as a code. Paulo talked about misconfigurations, identity and access management problem. In my section, I'm going to basically focus on the how part, right? How organizations can protect themselves, from this type of issues and what needs to be deployed. I'm going to demonstrate how a simple cloud misconfiguration can cause a major data breach, and basically, essentially, I'm dissecting an incident that we have seen in the industry back in 2019. So the client was one of the largest credit card company in the US. Because of the incident, they lost 100 million credit application data. And that was mainly due to the fact that, in their cloud environment, there were misconfigurations in their workload. Their application, they were hosting their applications from AWS, from Amazon Web Services. And, to be very specific, the misconfiguration was really coming from a WAF, the web application firewall that was front-ending their application, right? Now, the interesting thing about this attack was, it wasn't rocket science from hacker perspective. Hacker was using a very well-known method called server-side request forgery, where you can actually trick a server, a workload, to respond to your command when it is not supposed to, right? So again, the simple misconfiguration, from hacker perspective, very small effort, but the damage was significant. Now you would think that, this just happened to this one company, I'm protected. But interestingly, if you talk to Gartner, Gartner is saying that 99% of the cloud data breaches today are happening because of cloud misconfigurations, right? So let me kind of like go through the details, what exactly happened, and then I will focus on the how part. Before I jump onto the solution side and talk about the attack, I want to talk about 4 AWS constructs that you probably need to understand before you actually understand how the attack happened. When you deploy your workload in AWS, they have something called security groups. Security groups are nothing but firewall policies. The firewall policy says who can come in and who can go out. Simple. The second thing is, if you are using a WAF, to protect your public-facing application, there is an HTTP request called IMDS, right? And what that really means is when someone is executing a command, if you have IMDS, you can have version number 1 and version number 2. The difference is version number 1 doesn't really challenge the requester with, and ask for secret key. Version 2 does. So in other words, if you were running IMDS version 2, you are in a better position. The third construct is identity and access management role, right? So if someone wants to access to your workload in the public cloud environment, basically they need to be part of an IAM role, an IAM policy, and that will allow them, to access that particular resource. And then in this slide, in red color, I said CI/CD role. What is CI/CD stands for? CI/CD is basically the development tools that your DevOps, your software engineers are using. Some of these tools, common tools would be, Jenkins and GitLab and, Terraform and Ansible and so on and so forth, right? So now that you understand this 4 construct, how did the attack happen? The firewall rule allowed someone from outside to connect to the WAF, obviously, because it's a public-facing application. Anybody should be able to access the application. So there were no problem on the security groups. The security groups only allow 443, which is basically let's allow the connection. Now, the misconfiguration started here. The IMDS version 1 was configured. That means, when client and server is talking, there will be no additional challenges, right? Version 2 would have been the right configuration, but that was a simple misconfiguration from the DevOps side. And then the third, the identity and access management policy. There was a role, the CI/CD role. That role should have been attached to only the CI/CD tools, things like Jenkins and Terraform and Ansible. But by mistake, the CI/CD role was attached to the WAF, and because of that role, since it was attached to the WAF, the attacker knew the attacker knew the vulnerability. What the attacker did is she executed a simple command. The simple command came to WAF and said, "Can you share the secret key for me to part of the CI/CD role?" And then WAF did not challenge it. It responded to that request, shared that metadata, and then with that access key, the attacker assumed that role, which is the CI/CD role, and with that role, it allowed her to connect to S3 bucket, where the client was hosting or storing 100 million credit card application information, right? So again, if you kind of like think about how the attack happened, it's a simple effort from hacker perspective. The hacker, in fact, was an ex-AWS employee. She knew about this misconfiguration, and she executed a simple command to get the secret key. And then with that key, she got in and she collected profits. Of course, she was charged. But again, that was a major breach for that credit card company, for the client in the US. So now, what I'm going to talk about, how you could have prevented this attack, right? Simple CSPM and CIAM tool. The CSPM stands for Cloud Security Posture Management. CIAM stands for Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management. Essentially, using these two technology, you are continuously monitoring your security posture to make sure, A, you do not have misconfigurations in the cloud, and you are also looking at identity and access management, the permissions, who can access what, and basically the CIAM will enforce least privilege access, right? So again, with CSPM, the security groups, if there are any vulnerabilities in the security group, CSPM will highlight it. CSPM will remediate that problem. Same here, if the IMDS version was V1, CSPM tool will highlight that you should run V2, and it will automatically remediate this. And then CIAM will make sure the right identity has access to your workloads, right? So at Zscaler, we are offering, as part of our GCP product portfolio, Zscaler Cloud Protection, we are offering the security tools. CSPM and CIS is fully integrated in our GCP portfolio. From deployment perspective, simple tool, it's all API-based tool set. That means, it's not a firewall, it's not a web proxy that you have to deploy. For CSPM, we ask our customer to simply onboard their AWS, Azure, and GCP accounts. And as soon as that onboarding happens, we fire off close to 3,000 policies. We get a snapshot of your current configuration, and then we compare and contrast that configuration with cloud security best practices, different regulatory compliance frameworks, and then we bubble up anything that we think is a risky from configuration perspective. And then the tool automatically kicks in, and then it does its own remediation, right? So again, from deployment perspective, simple tool. You don't have to worry about creating policies. You don't have to worry about changing network settings or deploy VMs and stuff like that. Simple tool, but very powerful. The CIAM, very simple again, very similar concept. When organizations are onboarding their AWS, Azure, and GCP accounts, we run a discovery. We figure out, what are the permissions that are available. We look at human permissions, we look at non-human permissions. Typically, a lot of API-based tools are connected to your workload. So we discovered that the next step is running machine learning algorithm. We figure out what are some of those overprivileged identities, right? Again, on the human side, we will say, this is a software engineer, he's a front-end developer, why he has access to the database. Same thing for non-human users. Any API-based application that are connected to your workload, we will run peer group analysis, we will run machine learning technology to identify those overprivileged identities. The tool has this concept of prioritizing risk, right? So we can also prioritize, what are the ones that need to be fixed right away, what are the low priority ones, and so on and so forth. And then auto remediation kicks in, right? Let me just walk you guys through very super quickly the product itself. Again, when you log into CSPM, the CSPM first starts with asset security, right? What kind of workloads you are running, where they're located, are they protected? Do they have high risk, low risk, medium risk? If you are a compliance persona, the tool right away tells you, from CIS perspective, what is your posture? From PCI GDPR perspective, what is your posture? If you are, someone from InfoSec team, SecOps, you want to, go straight into your high critical risk areas, right? So the tool has this prioritization concept, risk likelihood versus risk impact, and so on and so forth. And basically, the tool walks you through what are the things that need to be fixed right away. Right now, when I was talking about the breach, this particular client, I just wanted to highlight how we would have solved this problem. As you can see on the screen, we have thousands of predefined policies. For AWS, we have policies for identity and access management, audit and logging, monitoring, and so on and so forth. But for that specific breach, these are the predefined policies that goes and find out if you have any vulnerabilities in terms of firewall policies and security groups, right? So the job for tool to find out, do you have RDP port open? Do you have SSH port open? Paulo was talking about this. And if we see those vulnerabilities, then the tool will automatically remediate this type of issues, right? When you move over to the CIAM you are trying to focus on identity and access management, again, as soon as you onboard the accounts, right away, the tool will tell you that these are the number of human users that are accessing your workload. These are the non-human users, how many resources you have, how many millions of permissions you have for these resources. And then the tool also has this concept of high risk, right? What are the things that you need to prioritize? What are the things that you need to focus on? And interestingly, this is a signature that we have built that basically detects if you have bad configuration in terms of this IMDS construct that I was talking about, right? So essentially, what this is telling you is that this particular workload, the IMDS version 1 is configured. That means when a request, HTTP request, come to it to collect the metadata for an EC2 instance, it will not challenge it. That's not a good idea. You should be configuring version 2 so that it asks for some secret key so that the requester is a legit requester, right? And then the last thing I wanted to show you was, again, from that specific attack perspective, we have signatures that talks about, the abnormal unused permissions, right? So again, going back to the attack, the CI/CD role should never have been attached to the WAF. And these are the likes of problems that we are going to find with this type of signature. So the screen that you are looking at, it's slightly different. It's talking about a human user. This person, Amos, have access to this particular resource through this policy. But with machine learning, we are highlighting that this is an overprivileged permission. And then you should be able to take an action by remediating this problem, right? So with that, the last thing, I want to mention, once again, I wanted to reinforce that the CSPM and CIAM, simple tool, looking for misconfigurations, compliance violation, identity and access management problem, but can be super powerful and very critical for your public cloud infrastructure security. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Kavita. Kavita, take it away. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Moinul. Many thanks to Paolo and Graham for sharing all your real world stories. I also wanted to thank Rich for moderating this really fantastic conversation, and Moinul for diving into this, this deep dive for us on the anatomy of a breach. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all of you for attending today's session. If you have missed any part of today's episode at all and would like to revisit it, just visit cxosummit.zscaler.com. We will have the recording posted shortly. But let us continue this conversation. Please join me and your IT leadership colleagues in the private Zscaler CXO community on LinkedIn, where you can engage with your peers and like-minded IT innovators to learn more about digital transformation best practices. We will be sharing that link and invitation with you in an email as we follow up. And from all of us here at Zscaler, please do take care, stay safe and healthy. And we look forward to seeing you at episode 2 on July 1st, where we'll discuss a really exciting topic around reducing the IT carbon footprint and making the case for green security. Until then, goodbye.